October 1, 1993. A 21-year-old woman drives an armored truck out of Circus Circus casino in Las Vegas. Inside that truck is $3.1 million in cash. Her coworkers are inside filling ATMs. They think she'll be right back. But Heather Tallchief doesn't come back. She drives straight to a warehouse where her boyfriend is waiting. They load the money, disguise themselves as an elderly woman and her doctor, board a private jet, and vanish. For 12 years nobody knows where they are. For 12 years they live off millions in stolen cash. And then in 2005, Heather walks into a federal courthouse and surrenders. But her boyfriend Roberto Solis, he's still out there, still free, still has most of the money, and nobody knows where he is. This is the story of one of the biggest armored car heists in Las Vegas history. A story of manipulation and mind control, of sex magic and hypnotic voice tapes, of a convicted murderer turned prison poet who brainwashed a young woman into committing the perfect crime, and of a master criminal who pulled off a heist so clean, he's been free for over 30 years. I'm Pam, and this story will shock you, because Heather Tallchief served only 5 years in prison, while Roberto Solis, the mastermind who took nearly all the money, remains one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. Stay until the end, because the way this heist was executed and how one criminal disappeared forever is absolutely brilliant. Heather Catherine Tallchief was born in Buffalo, New York. She's Seneca Indian. She had a normal childhood. Went to Williamsville South High School. At 20, she moved to San Francisco to work as a nursing assistant in an AIDS hospice. She had a clean record. No criminal history. She was compassionate, caring, good at her job. And then in 1993 at age 21, she met a man at a San Francisco bar. His name was Roberto Solis. He was 48 years old, 27 years older than her. And he was about to change her life forever. Roberto Solis was not a normal man. He was born in Nicaragua in 1945. He'd lived in the United States for decades. And he had a very dark past. In 1969, Solis and 2 accomplices attempted to rob a Loomis armored car at a Woolworths store in San Francisco. When the Loomis guard Louis Dake showed them his money bag was empty, Solis shot him. Killed him in cold blood. Solis was convicted of murder. Sentenced to life in prison. Most people would rot in that cell forever. But Roberto Solis was not most people. He was brilliant, charismatic, and he knew how to manipulate a system. While in prison, Roberto Solis started writing poetry under the pen name Pancho Aguila. And his work was good. Really good. So good that literary critics praised it. So good that he published 5 books from prison. So good that writers and artists started a campaign for his release. They argued that Solis was a changed man. An artist. A poet. Someone who deserved a second chance. The parole board listened. In 1991, after serving 22 years, Roberto Solis was released from prison. A convicted murderer walked free because he could write beautiful poems. Solis briefly violated parole by selling drugs. Went back to prison. But was released again in 1992. And in 1993 he was living in San Francisco. That's where he met Heather at a bar. She was 21. Naive. Searching for meaning. And Solis saw an opportunity. He was charming. Intelligent. Worldly. He talked about metaphysics and spirituality and magic. Heather was mesmerized. Within weeks they were dating. Within months Solis was planting ideas in her head. Ideas about Las Vegas. About opportunities. About changing their lives forever. Heather later claimed that Solis brainwashed her using sex, drugs, and something he called sex magic. She said he showed her VS tapes with swirling colors like tie-dye shirts. Hypnotic patterns. Things that opened your mind but made you more receptive to suggestion. She said Solis used these tapes to split her psyche. To make her compliant. To turn her into, in her words, almost like a robot who would follow his instructions without question. Psychiatrists who examined Heather during her trial disagreed on whether this brainwashing actually happened. Defense experts said yes, Solis manipulated her. Prosecution experts said no, Heather just wanted to please her boyfriend and was motivated by greed. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Was Solis manipulative? Absolutely. Did he use psychological tactics? Probably. But was Heather a mindless robot? Maybe not. Either way, Solis convinced Heather to do something that would change both their lives. He convinced her to help him rob an armored car. Just like he'd tried to do 24 years earlier. Solis and Heather began planning meticulously. First, they established false identities. Heather obtained multiple fake names. Applied for driver's licenses under those names. Got passports. Credit cards. Everything they'd need to disappear. In early 1993 they moved to Mexico for 3 months. Living off the grid. Preparing. By summer 1993 they returned to the United States. Their destination, Las Vegas. The gambling capital. The city of easy money. And home to millions in cash moving between casinos daily. In July 1993, Solis and Heather rented an apartment in Las Vegas. Then Solis told Heather what to do next. Apply for a job at Loomis Armored. The same company he'd tried to rob in 1969. The same company whose guard he'd murdered. Heather applied. On her application she listed a previous employer. Julius Suave, a Las Vegas art collector. That was one of Solis's aliases. A fake reference from her boyfriend. And somehow it worked. Loomis hired Heather as an armored car driver. She'd been in Las Vegas 6 weeks. She had minimal driving experience. She had no security background. But Loomis gave her access to millions of dollars. And the plan was set in motion. Heather went through Loomis training. Learned the routes. The procedures. The security protocols. She worked the Circus Circus casino route. Every day she and her coworkers would drive the armored truck to the casino. Load millions in cash. Drive it back to the vault. Simple routine. Predictable. And that predictability was exactly what Solis needed. He studied Heather's route. Timed everything. Found the perfect moment to strike. The moment when Heather would be alone in the truck with all that money. On September 30th, 1993, the day before the heist, Solis and Heather made final preparations. They rented a U-Haul truck. Solis told Heather exactly what to do the next day. Drive the armored truck to the warehouse. Don't deviate. Don't hesitate. Just follow the plan. Heather was nervous but committed. She'd come this far. He loved Solis. She believed in him. She believed they'd have a beautiful life together once this was over. She had no idea that Solis was using her. That once they had the money he'd take it all and leave her with almost nothing. October 1st, 1993. Heather reports for work at Loomis. It's a Friday. Just another day as far as anyone knows. Heather and her coworkers drive to Circus Circus casino. They park the armored truck. Her coworkers go inside to fill ATMs and collect cash from the casino vault. This is standard procedure. The driver waits in the truck. Keeps the engine running. Watches for threats. Heather sits behind the wheel. Inside the back of the armored truck is $3.1 million in cash. More money than most people will see in their entire lives. And Heather is about to steal all of it. As soon as her coworkers are inside the casino, Heather makes her move. She shifts the truck into drive. And instead of waiting, she drives away. Just drives straight out of the parking lot. Her coworkers won't notice for several minutes. By then it'll be too late. Heather drives the armored truck through Las Vegas streets. Nobody stops her. Nobody suspects anything. An armored truck driving around is normal. She follows Solis's instructions exactly. Drives to a warehouse they've rented. Backs the truck inside. And Solis is waiting. Inside the warehouse, Solis and Heather work quickly. They open the back of the armored truck. Inside are bags and bags of cash. $3.1 million. They start loading it into the U-Haul. Throwing bags. Moving fast. Time is critical. Any minute now, Loomis will realize the truck is missing. They'll call police. They'll start searching. Solis and Heather have maybe 15 minutes before all of Las Vegas is looking for them. They load the last bag. Close the U-Haul. And now comes the brilliant part. The disguises. Solis has prepared elaborate disguises. He becomes an elderly doctor. Gray wig, glasses, medical scrubs. Heather becomes an elderly woman. Gray wig, old lady clothes, heavy makeup to age her face. They look nothing like a 48-year-old ex-convict and a 21-year-old Loomis driver. They look like a doctor transporting an elderly patient. Perfectly innocent. They leave the armored truck in the warehouse, get in the U-Haul with the money, and drive to Las Vegas airport. Not the main terminal. The private jet area. Because Solis has arranged something that shows just how well he planned this. He's chartered a private jet. A private jet to Denver is waiting. Solis and Heather, still in disguise, board the plane with their luggage. Inside that luggage is $3.1 million in cash. The pilot doesn't ask questions. Rich people charter private jets all the time. An elderly doctor and his patient need to get to Denver quickly. Nothing unusual. The jet takes off. And just like that, Heather Tallchief and Roberto Solis have successfully pulled off one of the biggest armored car heists in Las Vegas history. They're in the air before Loomis even reports the truck stolen. Meanwhile, back in Las Vegas, Heather's coworkers realize something is wrong. They come out of Circus Circus and the armored truck is gone. They call their supervisor. Where's Heather? Where's the truck? The supervisor calls police. Within minutes, every cop in Las Vegas is searching for a Loomis armored truck. They find it hours later in the warehouse. Empty. $3.1 million gone. And Heather Tallchief gone with it. Police immediately suspect this was an inside job. They search Heather's apartment. Find evidence she'd been planning this. But Heather is long gone. She's already in Denver. Already executing the next phase of Solis's plan. Solis and Heather spend one night in Denver. Then they fly to Amsterdam. They've chosen Amsterdam carefully. The Netherlands has relaxed residency laws. No extradition treaty with the United States for certain crimes. And a large international community where two Americans won't stand out. They rent an apartment. Start building a new life. And they have $3.1 million to do it. They're set for life. Or so Heather thinks. But there's something Heather doesn't know yet. Something Solis has been planning all along. He never intended to share the money equally. He never intended to build a life with her. Heather was just a tool. A way to get access to the armored truck. A patsy who would take the fall if they got caught. Solis always planned to take the money and disappear. But he needs Heather for a little while longer. Because there's one more thing he wants from her. A child. In 1994, Heather gets pregnant. She's thrilled. She and Solis are going to be a family. They'll raise their child in Amsterdam with all this money. It'll be perfect. On April 11, 1994, Heather gives birth to a son. They name him Dylan. And for Heather, this is the happiest moment of her life. He has a baby. He has the man she loves. He has financial security. Everything seems perfect. But 2 months after Dylan is born, everything falls apart. Solis starts acting strange. Distant. He's gone for long periods. Won't say where he's been. He's cold to Heather. Barely interacts with the baby. And then one day Solis tells Heather the truth. He's leaving. He's taking the money. And she can't stop him. Heather is devastated. She just had his baby. She committed a major crime for him. She gave up everything for him. And he's abandoning her. Solis takes nearly all of the $3.1 million. He leaves Heather with just $18,000. $18,000 out of $3 million. That's it. Then Roberto Solis walks out the door. And Heather Tallchief never sees him again. Heather is now alone in Amsterdam with a 2-month-old baby and $18,000. She's furious, heartbroken, and terrified. She has no support system. Her family in the United States thinks she's a criminal. As she is. She can't go home. She'll be arrested immediately. She has to figure out how to survive in a foreign country with a baby and rapidly dwindling money. Heather had expected to live off millions for the rest of her life. Instead, she's broke and alone. Heather gets a job as a maid. Cleaning houses and hotels. The same money she stole and risked everything for is gone. And she's scrubbing toilets to feed her son. The irony is crushing. She works long hours, struggles to afford rent and food and daycare. She's exhausted, bitter, and starting to realize that Solis manipulated her completely. He used her, made her believe he loved her, made her believe they'd have a future together. And the moment he had what he wanted, he discarded her like trash. Heather starts thinking about going home, about turning herself in, about facing consequences so her son can have a normal life. For 12 years Heather lives in Europe, mostly in Amsterdam but sometimes moving to other cities. Always looking over her shoulder. Always worried the FBI will find her. Dylan grows up believing his mother is just a regular person. He doesn't know about the heist. Doesn't know his mother is wanted in the United States. Doesn't know his father is a convicted murderer and fugitive. Heather works hard to give Dylan a normal childhood. But the guilt eats at her. Every day she thinks about Loomis. About the crime she committed. About the life she could have had. Heather watches Dylan play and thinks about how he deserves better. Better than growing up and hiding. Better than living under false identities. Better than having a mother who's always scared. Dylan is getting older. Soon he'll start asking questions. Where's Dad? Why don't we visit America? Why don't I have grandparents? Heather knows she can't keep running forever. She starts thinking seriously about surrender. About turning herself in. About doing her time so Dylan can have a real life. With a real identity. With family. With opportunities. It's a terrifying decision. But Heather knows it's the right one. In 2005 Heather makes her decision. She's going to turn herself in. She contacts a lawyer in Las Vegas. Explains her situation. Says she wants to surrender. The lawyer contacts the FBI. Negotiations begin. Heather wants assurances. She wants to know what charges she'll face. What sentence she's looking at. Whether Dylan will be taken care of while she's in prison. The FBI agrees to her terms. She'll plead guilty, cooperate fully, and in exchange they'll recommend a lighter sentence. Heather agrees. Now comes the hard part. Telling Dylan. He's 11 years old now. Old enough to understand but young enough that this will traumatize him. Heather sits Dylan down, and she tells him everything. Mommy did something bad a long time ago. Before you were born. I stole a lot of money. And I have to go to prison for it. You're going to live with family in America. I'll be in prison for a few years. But then I'll be free and we'll be together again. Dylan is confused. I agree. But Heather promises him this is for the best. So they can have a normal life. So he can be an American citizen. So he can go to college and have opportunities. Dylan reluctantly accepts. And Heather books a flight to Las Vegas. September 15, 2005. Heather Tallchief walks into federal court in Las Vegas. It's been exactly 12 years since the heist. She's 33 years old now. 12 years older than she was when she drove that armored truck out of Circus Circus. She's arranged for Dylan to stay with her family. She's said her goodbyes. And now she's ready to face justice. FBI agents arrest her. She doesn't resist. She's here voluntarily. She's cooperating. She wants this over. The media goes crazy. The woman who disappeared with $3.1 million has turned herself in. But where's the money? Where's Roberto Solis? Heather tells them everything. How Solis manipulated her. How he used sex magic and drugs to brainwash her. How he took all the money and abandoned her. How she's been living in poverty for 12 years while he's presumably living like a king somewhere. The FBI listens carefully. They want Solis more than they want Heather. If she helps them find him, they'll go easier on her. But there's one problem. Heather has no idea where Solis is. She hasn't seen or heard from him in 11 years. He's vanished completely. Heather is charged with conspiracy to commit theft of money from an interstate shipment. A federal crime. She's looking at up to 10 years in prison. Her lawyer argues for leniency. She turned herself in. She's cooperated fully. She was manipulated by Solis. She's been punished enough living in poverty and fear for 12 years. The prosecution argues that doesn't matter. She committed a serious crime. Stole $3.1 million. Cost Loomis huge losses. Created a massive FBI investigation. She needs to serve significant time. Heather decides to plead guilty. No trial. Just admit what she did and accept the consequences. In her plea agreement she admits everything. Describes how Solis planned the heist. How they executed it. Where they went. How he abandoned her. The FBI uses this information to update their case against Solis. But without Heather's help locating him, they're no closer to catching him. Solis has had 12 years to disappear. 12 years to establish a new identity. 12 years to hide. And he's done it perfectly. He's like a ghost. The FBI knows he's out there somewhere. But they have no idea where. March 7, 2006. Heather's sentencing hearing. The courtroom is packed. Media. Law enforcement. Heather stands before the judge. Her lawyer makes a final plea for leniency. She was a victim of manipulation. She's shown remorse. She turned herself in when she could have stayed hidden forever. She just wants to reunite with her son. The prosecutor counters. She made choices. She knew what she was doing. She needs to be held accountable. The judge considers both arguments. Then announces the sentence. 63 months. 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. Heather is relieved. 5 years is manageable. She was facing 10. She'll serve maybe 4 years with good behavior. Dylan will be 15 when she gets out. Still young. Still her son. They can rebuild their lives together. Heather is taken into custody immediately. Transferred to federal prison. And she begins serving her time. She works. Stays out of trouble. Counts down the days until she can see Dylan again. Meanwhile, the FBI continues hunting for Roberto Solis. But they're hunting a ghost. A master criminal who's had 13 years to disappear. And he's done it perfectly. In prison, Heather has a lot of time to think. To reflect on her choices. To understand how Solis manipulated her. She reads books about psychological manipulation. About cult leaders and how they control people. And she starts to see the patterns. How Solis isolated her. Made her dependent on him. Made her believe she couldn't survive without him. Used sex and drugs to keep her compliant. Made her feel special. Chosen. Like they were partners. When really she was just a tool. Heather writes letters to Dylan. Explaining everything. Apologizing for the choices she made. Promising to be a better mother when she gets out. Dylan writes back. He's angry but he still loves her. He visits when he can. Those visits are what keep Heather going. Knowing her son hasn't given up on her. Knowing they'll be together again. Heather also thinks about Solis constantly. Where is he? Is he living in luxury on that money? Does he ever think about Dylan? Does he feel any guilt? Or is he just congratulating himself on the perfect crime? August 2010. After serving 4 years and 5 months, Heather Tallchief is released from federal prison. She's 38 years old. She's paid her debt to society. But she's not truly free. She has a criminal record. She'll struggle to find work. She'll always be known as the woman who stole $3.1 million. But she has something more valuable than money. She has her son. Dylan is 16 now. He's waited for her. And they can finally start rebuilding their lives together. Heather is on probation. She has to report regularly. Stay out of trouble. Find legitimate employment. She works odd jobs. Keeps her head down. Tries to live quietly. The media occasionally reaches out for interviews. She does a few. Tells her story. Warns other young women about manipulation. About con artists who use love and sex to control. About how she lost everything because she trusted the wrong person. Heather is candid about her mistakes. She doesn't blame everything on Solis. She admits she made choices. Bad choices. And she's paying for them. But she hopes her story can help someone else avoid the same fate. While Heather served her time, Roberto Solis remained free. As of 2025, he's been a fugitive for over 31 years. The FBI has him on their wanted list. They know he's out there somewhere. But where? The theories are endless. Some think he's in Central or South America. Nicaragua, his birth country. Costa Rica. Panama. Places where American fugitives can disappear. Some think he's in Southeast Asia. Thailand, Philippines. Places with cheap living and lax enforcement. Some even think he's dead. That he died years ago and nobody knows. If Solis is still alive, he'd be in his late 70s now. Maybe even 80. He might be sick. He might be broke. Maybe he spent all that money years ago. Or maybe he invested wisely. Maybe he's living in a nice house on a beach somewhere. Spending his retirement with money he stole. With the child he abandoned grown up and never knowing his father. With Heather having served time while he remained free. That's the part that burns. The injustice of it. Heather paid for her crime. Solis hasn't. And he probably never will. The FBI hasn't given up. They've created age progression photos showing what Solis might look like now. They've followed leads in multiple countries. They've coordinated with international law enforcement. They've offered rewards for information. But nothing has panned out. Solis is either extremely careful or extremely lucky. Or both. The FBI believes he's alive. They have no evidence of death. No body. No death certificate in any database. He's just gone. The FBI has theories about how Solis has stayed hidden. He probably established multiple false identities before the heist. Got passports under different names. Created entire fake personas with supporting documentation. He probably has plastic surgery. Changed his appearance. He probably moves frequently. Never stays in one place long enough to establish a pattern. Never makes friends or builds relationships that could expose him. He lives like a ghost. Always looking over his shoulder. Always one step ahead. It's a lonely existence. But it's better than prison. And Solis chose loneliness over consequences. What happened to the $3.1 million? Heather got $18,000. She spent that within a year. So that leaves roughly $3.08 million unaccounted for. Did Solis spend it all? Over 31 years, even $3 million doesn't last forever. Especially if you're living well. Nice houses. Travel. Food. Entertainment. Paying for fake identities. Bribing officials. It adds up. Solis might have blown through that money decades ago. Or maybe he was smart. Maybe he invested. Put it in offshore accounts. Made it grow. Maybe he's worth $10 million now. We'll never know unless he's caught. Some of the money was marked. Serial numbers recorded. But none of that money has ever surfaced. No marked bills spending at casinos. No deposits at banks. Nothing. Either Solis was very careful about how he spent it or he laundered it. Traded it for clean money through underground channels. Or buried it somewhere and lived off small amounts at a time. However he did it, Solis has successfully enjoyed the proceeds of his crime for over 3 decades while Heather got 18,005 years in prison. The disparity is staggering. The heist cost Loomis dearly. $3.1 million lost. Never recovered. Insurance covered some but not all. But the financial loss wasn't the worst part. The reputation damage was catastrophic. How could Loomis hire someone who robbed them? How could their background checks miss that Heather's reference was her con artist boyfriend? How could they not have GPS tracking on armored trucks? How could one driver just drive away with millions? Loomis made major changes after this. Better background checks. GPS in all trucks. 2-person teams required at all times. No driver ever alone with the money. Other armored car companies also upgraded security after this heist. It exposed vulnerabilities across the industry. Heather's heist was textbook perfect. She exploited every weakness. And once companies saw how easily it could be done, they had to fix those weaknesses immediately. In a strange way, Heather and Solis improved armored car security. Not intentionally. But their crime showed what was possible. And the industry responded. So while Loomis lost millions, the security improvements probably prevented future heists worth hundreds of millions. Today, Heather Tallchief lives quietly somewhere in the United States. She keeps a low profile. Works normal jobs. Stays out of trouble. Her probation ended years ago, but she's still careful. Still aware that she'll always be known for this crime. Dylan is an adult now. In his 30s. He has his own life. Heather doesn't talk about their relationship publicly. That's private. Between a mother and son who went through something extraordinary together. A childhood in hiding. A teenage reunion. A lifetime of consequences from choices his mother made before he was born. Heather occasionally speaks to journalists. Tells her story. Warns about manipulation. But she doesn't seek attention. Doesn't try to profit from her crime. She just wants to live quietly. Pay her bills. Maybe find some peace. She'll never escape what she did. It will define her forever. But she's trying. Trying to be a good person now. Trying to make up for the harm she caused. It's all she can do. The past can't be changed. Only the future can be shaped. And Heather is trying to shape a better future than her past. The big question that haunts this case, was Heather really brainwashed? Or is that just an excuse to avoid full responsibility? Psychiatrists disagree. Some say yes, Solis used sophisticated psychological manipulation. Sex magic. Drugs. Isolation. Classic cult leader tactics. These experts say Heather was a victim. A young woman who fell under the control of a master manipulator. A convicted murderer who'd spent 22 years in prison learning how to manipulate people. Of course he could brainwash a naive 21-year-old. Other experts say no. Heather wasn't brainwashed. She made choices. She knew stealing was wrong. She knew what she was doing. She did it because she wanted money. Because she wanted adventure. Because she was in love and wanted to please her boyfriend. These experts say the brainwashing claim is just a way to shift blame. To play victim. To avoid accepting that she chose to commit a major crime. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Solis definitely manipulated Heather. But Heather also made choices. She could have said no. She could have reported Solis's plan. He didn't. And that's on her. We can't forget that Roberto Solis is a murderer. In 1969 he shot Loomis guard Louis Dake during a robbery attempt. Louis Dake was just doing his job. Protecting money. And Solis killed him for it. Dake had a family. A wife. Children. They lost a husband and father because of Solis. That murder is why Solis got life in prison. That murder is why he should have died in prison. But he was paroled. And he went on to commit another crime. Stole $3.1 million. Manipulated a young woman. Abandoned his own child. Solis leaves destruction everywhere he goes. How many other victims are there? Did Solis manipulate other women over the years? Did he commit other crimes we don't know about? During his years in prison, did he hurt people? After his release, before meeting Heather, what was he doing? Solis has lived 79 years. That's a lot of time to hurt people. Heather might be the most visible victim. But she's probably not the only one. And somewhere out there Solis might still be operating. Still manipulating. Still hurting people. Because that's what predators do. They don't stop. They don't change. They just get better at hiding. Looking back, the biggest tragedy isn't just the stolen money. It's that Roberto Solis was ever allowed to walk out of prison in the first place. The California Parole Board in 1991 made a catastrophic error. They were charmed by his poetry. They fell for the Pancho Aguila persona. They believed a man who murdered a guard in cold blood could be rehabilitated by metaphors and rhymes. They let a predator back into the wild. And within 2 years he had already groomed a young woman and stolen millions more from the very same company whose employee he had killed. This case is a haunting reminder of the flaws in the justice system. It shows how charisma can be used as a weapon and how a brilliant mind, when devoid of a conscience, can manipulate even the most seasoned officials. The parole board gave Solis the opportunity to commit the perfect crime. They gave him the freedom to find Heather. To find a new victim. And ultimately to disappear with a fortune that should have never been his. It's a failure that remains a dark stain on the history of California's penal system. Today, Roberto Solis remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the FBI's files. He is a ghost in the machine. Investigators have checked leads from Belize to the Philippines, but the trail is stone cold. He would be nearly 80 years old now. Is he a frail old man living in a modest apartment in Central America? Or is he still the sophisticated, silver-tongued manipulator, perhaps living under a new name, surrounded by a new circle of people who have no idea they are in the presence of a legendary fugitive? Every year that passes makes it less likely he will ever face a jail cell again. The FBI continues to hope that someone somewhere will recognize him. Perhaps a neighbor, a doctor, or a former associate will see his age-progressed photo and realize that the quiet man next door is actually a multimillionaire thief and murderer. But as time goes on, the odds favor Solis. He didn't just steal money, he stole time. He stole a life of freedom that he bought with $3.1 million and the ruined reputation of a young woman he claimed to love. As for Heather Tallchief, her life is a testament to the fact that you can survive your worst mistakes, but you can never truly outrun them. She lives a life of profound quiet. She isn't the 21-year-old girl in the armored truck anymore. She's a woman who knows the exact cost of $1, because she paid for hers with 5 years of her freedom and 12 years of her life in exile. Her relationship with Dylan is her focus now. She gave him back his name and his country, even if it meant losing her own liberty for a while. Heather's story is a warning. It's a cautionary tale about how easily a person can be led astray when they are searching for meaning and find it in the wrong person. She was a nursing assistant who cared for the dying. She was a girl with a heart. Solis took that heart and turned it into a getaway driver. She has forgiven herself, perhaps, but the world hasn't forgotten. She remains the face of the Circus Circus heist. The woman who walked away with millions and came back with nothing but the truth. The story of Heather Tallchief and Roberto Solis is more than just a heist. It's a study in the power of influence. One man used his mind to escape a life sentence and then used it again to steal a fortune. One woman used her heart to follow a monster and spent the next 30 years trying to find her way back. If this story teaches us anything, it's that the most dangerous criminals aren't always the ones with the loudest guns. They're the ones with the smoothest words and the coldest plans. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button. It helps me keep bringing these deep dives to you. Subscribe to True Crime Stories by Pam so you never miss a case. And tell me in the comments, do you believe Heather was truly brainwashed, or was she just a willing participant in the heist of a lifetime? And where do you think Roberto Solis is hiding today? I'll be reading your theories. Thank you for watching, thank you for being part of this community, and stay safe out there. I'm Pam and I'll see you in the next story. And remember, the truth always comes out. Always.